BOISE, after losing in the national championship game last season. Before the start of another year, the Gonzaga basketball team decamped last fall to a lake near their campus in eastern Washington. They spent 2 days there, only this wasn't a typical team-building retreat. This trip had some of those elements: a Texas Hold'em tournament, a zip-lining excursion, intense games of pickleball, but it also contained an underlying theme that was decidedly more modern: mindfulness. "We're trying to get them to understand, how do you problem solve," says Travis Knight, the team's strength and conditioning coach and the event's organizer. "Don't want them to be SOLRS on the court, just following commands. We want them thinking more like special forces, generating their own collective energy and confidence." Which is how the Zags found themselves divided in two teams, locked into rooms, needing to figure out codes by doing puzzles in order to escape. For senior guard Silas Melson, the exercise felt like it lasted longer than it actually did. Minutes passed like hours. Even though his team finished last, he thought back to the room that he escaped from on Thursday, when Gonzaga played UNC Greensboro to open its 20th straight NCAA tournament appearance. Not only did the Zags tip earlier than usual, in the late morning, but UNCG played an awkward style, pressing and slowing the tempo. Gonzaga had to adjust. But for the Bulldogs, this simply marked another room from which they had to work together to break out of, as they advanced to face Ohio State on Saturday in the round of 32 in the West region. "At the end of the day, it's still basketball," Melson says. "But things like mindfulness, the escape room, those are an extra step that other people may not take that we do. Watch out, Tom Brady." Soon enough, the TB12 method may be replaced by a new program called the GB15 process, as in the Gonzaga Bulldogs and their 15 players. It's not that Gonzaga does any one thing in its regimen that's completely new to college basketball training. It's that the Zags take what Knight describes as a holistic-minded approach. Imagine Bob Knight using that term to describe how he trained players at Indiana. Or Roy Williams. The Bulldogs started down this training path roughly 5 years ago. They do yoga twice a week as a team with an instructor who was a pole vaulter in college. They study their players' sleep patterns, their DNA and their TS. They know that one player responds well to an uptick in carbohydrates, while another needs to consume more saturated fats. And, in addition to the obvious stuff like basketball practice and weight training, they also swim and work on flexibility, agility and functional movement. It's college basketball in a new age. Knight pulls together his program from a variety of sources, including the best player in program history, John Stockton. The NBA Hall of Famer retired in 2003, long before mindfulness and an avocado ice cream ethos ricocheted throughout sports. But Stockton was TB12 before TB12, Knight says, combining unusual lower body strength for a man his size with workouts that focused on balance, coordination and anticipation. Knight won't say exactly what types of drills Stockton has taught him, but did say, "We're teaching our players to anticipate what their opponents will do and counter that with balance." The process has all sorts of lifelong implications for Gonzaga's players. Melson, for instance, learned that he was lactose intolerant and reluctantly cut milk and cheese from his tea. Fellow guard Zach Norville Jr. found out he needed to sleep 2 hours longer each night, no easy task for a college student, and lose 11 pounds, which he did by spending a month as a pescatarian. "I felt better instantly," he says. It's worth noting that a slimmer, more mindful Norville knocked down the key three-pointer against UNCG with 20.8 seconds left. He had been trained, he says, to handle that exact situation. Another escape room, as it were. Knight says not many players grumble about the team's approach because few Y, as he endearingly calls him, takes part in yoga sessions and mindfulness retreats. It was few who first worked with the former pole vaulter, Jordan Ross-Galley, whose own career at Oregon ended after she suffered from stress fractures in her shins and bulging discs in her back. He found her training so compelling that he asked her to work with his players, and then other teams at Gonzaga, to reduce both their stress levels and injury rates, connecting, Knight says, body to breath through downward dog, cat and cobra poses. Ross-Galley could be fairly described as a player's coach, or yoga instructor. She helped save former center Prez Makarnowski's career after he underwent back surgery on the final day of 2015. And she has helped other players with their nutrition, given mindfulness seminars and even let star forward Jonathan Williams control the music during yoga sessions. He says he favors a mix of G-rated hip-hop and R. It's good not to be last in class. Williams, Gonzaga's best defender and a force inside, says, "Yoga has been a big part of my growth. Knight says the team's holistic approach to basketball preparation stems in part from how he believes modern coaches must relate to players in order to best reach them. In this generation, Knight says, kids don't have as much autonomy as we had growing up, where you're playing outside and mom doesn't know where you are and you're just kind of figuring it out. We have to create those opportunities for them, so they feel less like a commodity and they're thinking on a higher level. That's how Gonzaga overcame the devastating loss to North Carolina in last season's national championship game and how the Zags shook off a rare 3 defeats this